I want to be very clear about what I said. Nobody called for the invasion of Pakistan. Senator McCain continues to repeat this. What I said was the same thing that the audience here today heard me say, which is if Pakistan is unable or unwilling to hunt down bin Laden and take him out, then we should. Now, that I think has to be our policy because they are threatening to kill more Americans.
There is a saying in American politics: no campaign is ever as good as it looks when it is winning, nor as bad as it looks when it is losing. In Mitt Romney's comments on Libya, you see part of the reason why campaigns end up looking so very bad when they are losing. A few months ago, the Romney campaign had a clear theory of the race: keep the focus on the economy. When other issues came up, they had a clear strategy for dealing with them. You acknowledge the issue, you put out some restrained comment, and then, if possible, you end by saying, and we need to remain focused on the economy. Everything was about the Romney campaign's prime directive. It's the economy, stupid. That Romney campaign would have known just what to do on Libya. A simple, restrained statement condemning the murderers and expressing sympathy and solidarity with the victims. A few lines on Romney's resolve to hunt terrorists like these down make Romney look presidential, but whatever you do, do not interrupt the underlying dynamics of the election. This is, by and large, actually, the template that other major Republicans have followed in their responses to the attacks. Look at Speaker John Boehner's statement, for instance. He said, quote, "We mourn the families of our countrymen in Benghazi and condemn this horrific attack. 11 years after September 11th, this is a jolting reminder that freedom remains under siege by forces around the globe who relish violence over free expression and terror over democracy, and that America and free people everywhere must remain vigilant in defense of our liberties." Simple, it's classy, it doesn't move the campaign too much. And this strategy for Republicans, it makes sense. President Obama, after all, has a wide lead in the polls on who is better at handling foreign policy and terrorism. If the campaign turns to those issues, that might well help Obama. And that brings us to the corollary of the Romney campaign's prime directive. If the economy isn't about the economy, then Obama might actually win. Stupid. But the underlying dynamics of the election are no longer seen as being enough for Romney. He trails Obama in the polls and has for basically the entire campaign. He received little to no bump from his convention and then watched Obama enjoy a significant polling bounce out of his. The economy just isn't proving sufficient to beat Obama. That means that the Romney campaign's strategy isn't proving sufficient to beat Obama, which means they need to change it on the fly. When campaigns are losing, they get a little desperate like that. And when they get desperate, they begin making riskier decisions. And so Tuesday night, the Romney campaign made a very, very risky decision. They released this statement. "I'm outraged by the attacks on American diplomatic missions in Libya and Egypt and by the death of an American consulate worker in Benghazi. It is disgraceful that the Obama administration's first response was not to condemn attacks on our diplomatic missions, but to sympathize with those who waged the attacks." Wednesday morning, given a chance to walk it all back as the full details of the attacks revealed themselves, the Romney campaign doubled down on that statement, making clear that it was not a mistake. The Romney campaign isn't run by amateurs. They knew this statement was incendiary. They knew it would change the campaign, and presumably, they knew it was wrong. It conflates a statement from a terrified staffer in the Egyptian embassy who was trying to calm a potential angry mob with the Obama administration. It conflates unrest in Egypt with the murder of an American diplomat, among others, in Libya. And it accuses the Obama administration of something that they not only didn't do, but that would have been unbelievably, unimaginably horrific of them to do, to sympathize with terrorists who had just murdered one of the ambassadors they named. The backlash has probably predictably been brutal. The Atlantic's Jeffrey Goldberg called Romney's statement a slander. Times' Mark Halpern tweeted that it was, quote, the most craven and ill-advised move of 2012. Josh Marshall of Talking Points Memo wrote that it was, quote, reminiscent of John McCain's rash call 4 years ago to cancel the presidential debates and the campaign itself to deal with the unfolding economic crisis. Romney also got poor reviews from Wall Street Journal columnist and former Reagan speechwriter Peggy Noonan.
I don't feel that Mr. Romney has been doing himself any favors, say, in the past few hours, perhaps since last night. Sometimes when really bad things happen, when hot things happen, cool words or no words is the way to go.
Romney's comments were, to be sure, unusually noxious and indecent, even by the standards of risky campaign maneuvers. But this is also what happens when campaigns get desperate. Like a gambler who has already lost too much, they begin taking risks in the hope of making it all back. And then, more often than not, they pay the price. Let's bring in my friend Ben Smith, editor-in-chief of BuzzFeed.com, who did a great piece today on the backlash against Romney's quotes in Republican foreign policy circles. Ben, it is good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Ezra.
I could have believed that the initial statement from the Romney campaign was an overeager press staffer or comm staffer who made a mistake. What I kind of couldn't believe was the campaign's decision, for Romney's decision, to double down on it in televised remarks today. Here's what he said.
The president takes responsibility not just for the words that come from his mouth, but also from the words that come from his ambassadors, from his administration, from his embassies, from his State Department. They clearly sent mixed messages to the world, and the statement that came from the administration, and the embassy is the administration. The statement that came from the administration was a statement which is akin to apology, and I think was a severe miscalculation.
You talk to them. What upside do they see here?
I mean, that was a very strange moment. He was relitigating this very small thing in a statement that had been put out last night before. I think quite the scale of this disaster was clear. You know, before it was clear that the ambassador had been murdered, that 3 other embassy staffers had been murdered, that this was really a coordinated assault, not some sort of random bit of mob violence. And he's sort of relitigating this, and you know, as this has become a much bigger story, and one that, you know, it's very hard to drag into presidential politics. And when I talked to Republican, you know, foreign policy hands this morning, the universal take was just, what is he doing? And there's that on campaigns, there's always a temptation to jump into stories like this when the reality of them just isn't clear yet. It takes a while for this stuff to sort out. And what the standard thing to do is reporters call you for comment, and these staffers know that you just have to wait. You have to hold your fire and just, you know, wait until you know what's going on. And Romney last night had this statement that was actually embargoed. It was released earlier, but embargoed for midnight because they didn't want to be seen as playing politics on September 11th. They then changed their mind around 10 p.m., said, okay, we'll do a little politics on 9/11. But the statement was already slipping out of date as the situation changed.
Yeah, just a little bit in 9/11 politics. More on the kind of substantive side of this, of what are we learning in this campaign, there seems to be kind of a tough pattern emerging here for Romney. His trip on foreign policy, his trip to the London Olympics didn't go very well. It had a lot of gaffes. He went to Israel and accidentally insulted the Palestinians. And now he jumped on the political dimension of a national tragedy much too quickly in a way that created a really significant backlash. He doesn't come to the campaign with very much foreign policy experience. So at what point is there a danger of having a kind of narrative cohere that he's not, to use Hillary Clinton campaign's formulation, the guy you want answering the 3 a.m. phone call?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, certainly that's the narrative the Obama campaign is driving. He doesn't have less foreign policy experience than, say, Barack Obama had before. He worked in international business. He's talked to people at a high level in that world for a long time, as much as Bill Clinton, as many presidents did before taking office. I think there's a bind on Republican foreign policy right now, which is that, you know, in their heart what they want to say is that who lost Egypt, who lost Libya, you know, we need to be, in a muscular way, retake control in these places. At the same time, anything that is a hint of American involvement overseas polls terribly. They know they can't reach the logical conclusion of a lot of these arguments, which is more troops somewhere in the Middle East. And so you're kind of stuck condemning Obama without really an answer, without saying, yes, let's invade Syria.
So you spoke to a bunch of Republican foreign policy hands today. What did they say the Romney campaign should do next? What did they say the next move is?
I mean, they were really just shaking their heads at what the last move had been, and we were calling it a disaster. One of them referred to it as a Lehman moment, in the sense that just the sense of a loss of a grip on the campaign. I mean, it wasn't so much that McCain was doing something immoral by suggesting that you know, campaigning be suspended for this crisis, but just a sense that he had lost his grip of the thread of the thing, and that was what was projected by Romney this morning.
Ben Smith, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Diplomacy has traditionally been a bipartisan effort. The last Republican president understood that. Yet the party's current presidential nominee seems to be at a loss when it comes to the Muslim community. Congressman Keith Ellison will join me to discuss the Romney response next. And later, the Census Bureau has some good news when it comes to the number of insured Americans. We'll bring you all the details coming up.